So, how do I achieve the mission that God has for me to reach others for Jesus Christ? And how do I do that in a church context? We're going to talk about that in this video. This video is a part of a series of videos. If you go to our channel on YouTube, Bethel Pittsburgh, under playlist, you'll find a playlist titled Virtual Coach. And in this session, we're doing some coaching on how to go about achieving the gospel mission. And there's some ins and outs to think through. And that is, one, I want to consider the Bible's language about being strategic. You think of 1 Corinthians 9, I don't box this one beating the air or without aim. You think of statements like 1 Corinthians 3 that talks about that I build a foundation as a master builder, and concepts as well in like 1 Corinthians 14 that talks about how we are to all be strategically focused on building the church. So these are things that we're supposed to do. So how do I do this effectively? And there's some things that I want to consider. The mission is to make disciples according to Matthew 28. So it's not just to make converts, but to help someone. You can see this play out in Ephesians chapter 4, as well as a number of other places in Scripture, that the objective of my mission is to be available and to offer to help people grow in their faith, to come from starting the journey of following Christ to continually developing as a follower of Jesus Christ. So that's the goal. How do I do it effectively? Well, one, it's going to be hard to do that if I'm not in some type of continual relationship with that person, because I can't develop them if I'm out of the picture. And so that's something to consider. Another issue is I don't have all the answers, or there's some developmental needs that I have that I really am not in the position to be able to offer to somebody else. And so I need some resources. And when we think of things like Ephesians 4 saying that when every joint works together, the body grows, or statements like in Proverbs, I think it's Proverbs that says that a three-corded strand is not easily broken, that when we work together, there's a greater strength in that. And so one of the reasons why we work together with a local church, and some of our pushback would be, well, the local church, that's an organization, and we're called to expand God's kingdom, not a specific church's organization. It's not a building and those kind of things. And all of that is true. But if we're not careful, we will end up diluting things so much that we never link people into a network of believers that are working together to more strategically and effectively advance this gospel mission. And so there is a need to collaborate and cooperate with a local church. And so I want to get planted into a church, and I want to work with that church in helping people grow in their faith. And there's various aspects of that. One is we want to get them to the church. So some people really kind of push back on that as well, because I'm going to witness to someone, I don't care what church they land in. And while there is some truth to that, if we're sending all the people to churches that we're not a part of, then how am I supposed to make a disciple out of this person? And so we want to get them in a context in which we can help disciple them. And so there's the need to invite them to our church service or to our discussion group so that they can start to be present in the ministries and receive the resources and build the relationships so as the growth. And I might say, well, but some people do that and they don't get plugged in, or no one helps them and they don't end up developing. Understand that that's kind of part of being a part of a group is it's not going to always play itself out in the ideal. That doesn't mean that there's not usefulness to it. So even though there's not perfection, I need to know that there is still usefulness. And so I want to, because there's opportunity. Not every opportunity is taken by the receiver or the giver, but there is opportunity. And so I'm going to invite them to church. and I'm going to try to help them get plugged into different things so that they can grow. And again, some of us might have that organized religion resistance of, I don't want to promote organized religion. But how are you going to achieve, if we are better together, if we advance the gospel, if we achieve the mission of making disciples better, if we work together with other people, how are we going to achieve that if there is not some level of organization, if I'm constantly resisting to that? So I want to make sure that I'm aware of those things and working along those lines. So helping a church grow numerically is not counter to the gospel mission. It's supportive of it. And so what are the things that I could be doing? So I wanted to cover one today in this video, and then in the videos ahead, I'll cover a few other ways that we can personally go about helping achieve the mission. And just the first step is on inviting people to church. Now, once again, a person might push back and say, well, that's not the full picture of discipleship. And again, you're right. That's not the full picture of discipleship. But that doesn't mean that it's not a part of the picture. I'm going to get them coming to the church services, like I said, so that they can begin to receive the various ministries and begin the opportunity to build relationships that all could facilitate growth. And so just because this is just a part of it doesn't mean it's not a part of the picture. And so inviting people to church. And here's how we can go about doing this. There's a lot of different ways. I'll focus more on our use of the invite card. So if you're a part of our local church, Bethel Assembly of God, in the back of the sanctuary, there's a table, there's a sign above it on the window, taped to the window behind it that says Welcome Center. That table, on that table, there are some invite cards to the church. Those are sitting there for you to take and hand out to other people. And so you could begin to invite people to church. And we can do that in a number of different ways. Some of us like to have a little more of a relational context before we do that. That's great. There's leverage with that. So if you have some friends or coworkers that you'd like to invite them to church. The upside to that is you have some relational leverage. The downside to that is sometimes we end up never getting to it because we're waiting for all the right factors to happen before I go ahead and extend that invitation. And we end up failing to reach people because we're not asking a lot of people. You think of the parable of the sower, they were throwing a seed anywhere. Wherever it would land, they would just throw it out there. So there was no preferential treatment towards, I'm just going to invite someone only in this context, only if I'm sure they're going to come. And I sometimes have to ask myself, am I doing that because that's what God wants me to do, or am I doing it to kind of protect myself from failure or from I don't want my relationship to be different, or what is it that I'm doing there? Because what we've discovered is the more people we invite, the more people will come. It's kind of a law of averages and percentages. So if only 10% of people I invite come, then I'm going to need to invite 10 people for one person to come. But if I'm taking a year to get up the nerve to invite 2 people, well, this thing's going to move so slowly. So I have to just start inviting people. And so grab a bunch of those cards and just be ready to invite people. I have done it by inviting people like cashiers to church, and you might say, well, they're probably never going to come. I don't care. I'm just going to extend the invitation everywhere that I have any kind of social contact, and maybe even just make sure to word it in a decent way. So if you're talking to your waitress, just say, hey, you know what, if you are ever looking for a good church to be a part of, or if you're ever looking some support in following Jesus or just in life in general, I'd love for you to come to my church sometime, hear some information. Just kind of word it in a polite, kind way, inviting way, and you might be surprised how many people respond to that. And also make a goal for yourself, because the things that we don't measure tend to not happen. And so if I'm just assuming I'm going to get to that at some point, it's kind of like the pile of stuff at the end of some table that you're like, yeah, I need to clean that up sometime. But you don't actually set a goal to do it. Then that pile of stuff ends up, before you know it, 3 years, it's still sitting there on the table. And so if I'm going to invite someone to church, I need to decide I'm going to invite, for me, I think a good frequency would be one person a week. I'm going to make sure that by next week I've invited someone to church, and if I get to the end of this time period, I'm just going to have to go out somewhere and invite somebody to church. And I've done that where I just walk out of the church and look around and see if someone's walking, go up and invite them to church. But consistently inviting people to church, again, is that the whole picture of discipleship? No. But is that a step in the right direction? Yes. And so I encourage you to be doing that so that you can fulfill the mission that God has for you. If you have any questions on that, leave it in the comments below. I'd be glad to answer those. And as always, if you live in the Pittsburgh area and you would like to grow in your faith in person, we'd love for you to join us at Bethel Assembly of God, 251 State Street, Wednesdays at 6:30 and Sundays at 10 a.m. God bless.